Food for Thought is an educational program during which students explore the different kinds of foodstuffs the common U.S. soldier has had to live on from the time of the Civil War to the present. By using both original and reproduction mess gear, along with real food, students are presented with a timeline of a soldier's diet. The program provides an introduction to the history of Army rations and what all soldiers have fundamentally been given by the government to eat while living in the field. The pandemic has put a temporary halt on our in-person programming, so we are bringing this program to you via video. Today we will be discussing rations during the Civil War. Hope you enjoy it, and bon appetit! During the Civil War, soldiers spent 50 days in camp for every 1 day they spent out hiking or in battle. What did soldiers do in camp? Well, they read books, wrote letters to their families or loved ones, played cards, sang songs, and they cooked. Rations were not very large and would have to last. Typically, a Union soldier would receive daily 12 ounces of pork or bacon, or 1 pound and 4 ounces of fresh or salt beef, 1 pound and 6 ounces of soft bread or flour, 1 pound and 4 ounces of cornmeal. Per every 100 rations, there was issued 1 peck of beans or peas, 10 pounds of rice, 8 pounds of roasted and ground coffee, or 1 pound of tea, 15 pounds of sugar. And being in camp made getting a hot meal a little easier, but marching rations were not the most appetizing. Civil War soldiers received the rations listed on your screen when marching to another location or headed into battle. Salt pork is a fattier and thicker form of bacon, which is still used frequently, especially in southern states, to flavor beans or other vegetables. You might notice the lack of vegetables on this list. Fruits and vegetables were hard to keep fresh and added a lot of weight for soldiers to carry. The few fruits and vegetables soldiers were able to get were often desiccated or dehydrated, making them lighter and much smaller. The bread mentioned here is not a loaf of bread as you would imagine. Another name for this bread is hard tack. Hard tack is a simple type of cracker or biscuit made from flour, water, and salt. This simple snack is inexpensive and easy to make. If you'd like to give it a try, here's how. You won't need much to make hardtack. About 2 cups of regular flour and about a cup or so of water. You can add salt to taste if you'd like. Combine the flour and water together into a mixing bowl and mix them all together by hand until you have a dough-like substance. You can add water as needed if it starts to become too gummy. Once your dough is ready, add some more flour to a cutting board or to your counter and knead it out and slap it down as thin as you possibly can. Make sure to add that flour or else it might stick to your hands. Once you have it all patted out, we're going to take a rolling pin, or in my case, since I've lost my rolling pin, a wine bottle or other type of heavy glass bottle will do. And we're going to roll it out to get it as thin as possible. Make sure again to add more flour to the top of your dough so that it doesn't stick to your bottle or rolling pin. Once your dough is completely rolled out and you've got it as thin as you can, take a butter knife and trim off the edges, and then cut down the middle of the dough until you have a square. Here's my square. As you can see, it doesn't need to be perfect, because we're going to continue to cut it apart anyway. Once you have your dough cut into multiple squares, take a chopstick or a straw and poke some holes in each of the squares. You can do this in any sort of design that you'd like, or just randomly. Once your dough is cut and you have all your holes poked in it, you're ready to put it on a grease sheet and place it in a 250-degree oven. You'll leave it in there for at least an hour. Some recipes call for it to stay in the oven for up to 4 hours, but it takes a while, and be sure you let it cool after you take it out. Ready for a taste test? Well, it's a little bland and tastes a bit like pizza dough. We found, though, that if you don't want to eat it yourself, it makes excellent doggy biscuits. Aside from government-issued rations, soldiers were able to get food and supplies from some other sources. Supply trains brought supplies to camps and troops. In some cases, these were a row of wagons, and other times an actual train. However, as the war went on, supply trains were subjected to raids from enemy troops, or were sometimes unable to get through blockades, leaving troops without the benefit of the food that they carried. Another source of food items that were not available through the typical ration was from sutlers. Sutlers were traveling merchants who sold wares and supplies from a wagon or a tent. These merchants were civilians who would travel to military outposts or sometimes travel along with an army. Sutlers offered food and items that were not readily available to soldiers in the field or in camp, but they did so at higher prices that many soldiers were unable to afford. The other option Civil War soldiers had to get supplies and food outside of their rations was to forage. This meant that soldiers would look for wild food sources, such as game or plants, but it also meant that they would raid homesteads for livestock, vegetables, and other supplies. Tune in to our next episode of Food for Thought to learn about how soldiers ate in the trenches of World War I. Now that's some food for thought.